2008, and you have said that you've made significant progress in meeting, in regards to the lawsuit. Tell me a little about that.
Well, statistically, if you look at the volume of paragraphs, and it's hard to put into a narrative for most folks to even want to understand, but the orders have individual paragraphs, and with each paragraph is a requirement the office has to meet. And not only do you have to meet those, but you have to stay in compliance for 3 consecutive years to be in what they would call total compliance. And the volume that we have met is exceptional. And even when you talk about the internal affairs one, where we've been criticized and held in contempt for, I believe the percentage of that particular paragraph is 92% compliance. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done, but I also have to own our failures, and that's unfortunate we're here to talk about.
Yeah, tell me about those internal investigations. I know that you have made some progress on that front, but on average, it's still taking over 600 days to complete one of them. So tell me a little about what's behind that delay.
Yeah, I think that the number itself is misleading, because when you look at how long it takes and they give you an average, that doesn't mean that is the common time frame. It means that we have some investigations that are so lengthy and complex, they've sat that long. I shouldn't say sat, but they've taken that long. We have some cases that we've outsourced to independent investigators because there was a conflict of interest, and they've been being investigated for 5-6 years. So it builds on that number. The important number to me is this: we have closed over 4,500 internal affairs cases in the past 6 years. The backlog is not something that's being neglected or ignored. It's just the complexities of the court order make it so difficult for us to do it that it takes a lengthy period of time. If I could just paint a picture for you, we could have an employee who is accused of committing a crime. We got another employee who has been accused of rudeness towards a community member. Both of those investigations have to be done nearly exactly the same. There's a 100-point checklist for both investigations. So if in any other organization or any other profession an employee is rude, normally a supervisor would interact with that person, address it, correct it, or give them some form of discipline. Here we will tie up investigators for lengthy periods of time to do a complete investigation with a 100-point checklist or more to make sure we're meeting the demand of the court.
Wow. Is priority given to the more serious cases?
Unequivocally, my responsibility is to make sure that if any employee in the organization is accused of a serious offense and it involves public trust or a threat to the community, they're going to be taken out of that position and put on administrative leave, and that case will go to the front of the line. And that's why you see some taking so long, because it's like triage in a hospital. If someone comes in with a cut finger and someone comes with a heart attack, that person with a cut finger on a busy day may sit in the lobby for hours. And it is important to get resolution for that person. So whether it's the employee or the community member, we want to make sure there's an honest and just outcome to give respect to both. But because of the demand, which far exceeds our ability to staff that demand, a lot of these cases are taking longer than they should, and that's not acceptable. But that's a reality, and that's what people need to understand. This office is not negligent. This office is not ignoring its responsibilities. It's just that we have challenges with staffing and with our priorities, which is public safety, that make it difficult for us to meet to the level that the courts expect of us.
Tell me, the judge wrote in this latest motion that MCSO is completely ineffectual and renders no service to either the compliant or MCSO with its personnel response.
I'm not even sure I understand that statement, to be honest.
I guess there's just been some harsh criticism coming from the judge that you haven't done enough, that your office hasn't done enough.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I've always been a person who leads by example, and it owns my responsibility. So when I took this office, I don't look into history and say, because of that, make excuses. It's my job to get it done right. I would also tell you this: I'm the only guy who shows up every day as a sheriff of this office and has all the responsibilities that are encompassed in running this organization on behalf of the community. So the court has been harsh since the day I took the office. Regarding everything, it's a very punitive process. I have to recognize and address that. I also have to inspire employees to make sure that we're giving them a chance to succeed. So, as I said, I'm the only guy who's here every day when it comes to the people that we're speaking about. So I know what really does happen, the great work that's done here, the good people that work here, and I know what is expected of us to meet the court's demands. But you're not going to find a more committed sheriff or more committed men and women trying to meet their expectations, which in some ways, in my opinion, are, I don't want to say unrealistic, but sometimes they feel unattainable.
Tell me about these investigator positions for these internal reviews, because I think that that's a little bit more pressing because there is this fine
Yeah.
associated with it. How many of those positions have you been able to fill?
I believe we filled all of them. And listen, I'm going to do everything in my powers to not cost these taxpayers another penny. So the idea that there could be fines because we cannot hire those that we need to fill the positions, we're going to do everything in our powers to make sure that that happens. But it's not all within our control. I can go to the coffee shop up the street and see that they're short-staffed and that they're doing everything they can to hire people. That's a reflection of where we are as a society right now. But I'm not going to let our taxpayers pay any more money that we can avoid. At the same time, the problem is not staff alone. Obviously, the more staff you have, the more you can accomplish. The problem is the complexity of what's expected in this office. Unlike any other agency in the nation, that we investigate every case, whether it's anonymous, whether there is a complainant, whether the person that you're accusing is a current employee, a former employee, or a deceased employee. We have to investigate every single allegation the same way. So we take in upwards of 1,200 cases a year. Any profession, any business, if you can't staff to meet that and the expectations are so high that it's just difficult to overcome, you're going to have struggles. What isn't being discussed enough is this. I became the sheriff in 2017. I was elected in 2016, took the office in 2017. In 2018, we wrote a letter to the monitors expressing our concerns, saying it's not that we don't want to meet the court's expectations, but the process and the design is too complex and we will not be able to keep up with the volume. And then nothing was done until I was held in contempt just recently, and then suddenly now they're willing to, the monitors are willing to work with the courts and the parties to make some adjustments so that we can get some relief in ways to accomplish the same common good. If we've been talking about since 2018, why did it take this long for anyone to listen to us?
That's a good question. And I bet part of the frustration.
Yeah, I think the frustration is, so if I can speak on a personal scale, which I try not to too frequently, I'm so privileged and blessed to be the sheriff of the county, and people trust in me. I've worked my entire professional career to earn that trust, to earn their confidence that I am very serious about how we do what we do and that we're deserving of this privilege. I'll never know a day as sheriff where someone said, okay, here are the problems that existed. What would you do to get us to that same outcome? Is there a better way for us to accomplish this? I have federal court monitors who, and I'll say this in the most respectful manner that I can, aside from maybe one or two, they don't live in Arizona. They're not, accountable to the community members here. They're being paid a considerable wage of taxpayer money from within this community to scrutinize us, to find flaws, to find fault. And there really isn't an inherent incentive for them to work with us to help us learn this new language and meet the court's demands so that one day we can free the taxpayers of the burden, the financial burden that just for the monitors alone has exceeded, I think, $24 million.
Yeah, and then just in December, the Board of Supervisors had to approve additional money to pay what could be this latest fine. Do you anticipate that after January, you will not need any more money from the Board of Supervisors to cover the fine?
Oh, I'm not so naive to, the fines for this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I will do everything in my powers that this one to some extent is within our control on doing our best to staff. What is relatively new. In the past, we weren't in this position where we could hire civilian investigators. Even that comes with a requirement. The court has specifically stated who we can utilize in internal affairs to investigate these cases regarding their disciplinary background, their experience, all those types of things. So we had a really small pool in the organization who we could use. And these aren't even necessarily employees who wanted to go into that assignment. Now we have the ability to hire civilian investigators, but we've been contracted with civilian investigators long prior to this. And I believe that the cost there is upwards of $1 million to give them cases that take the civilian investigators as long, if not longer, to complete as our own employees. So it's just a matter of, if we're being honest, and I was prefaced by saying it's my job, it's my responsibility, I own it. But if we're truly being honest, the objective is to improve the quality of this organization's integrity. I challenge somebody out there to say it's not better today than it was 7 years ago in that area alone, to make sure that we're accountable and transparent in all internal investigations. I challenge somebody to argue otherwise. The one criticism is you're taking too long, and I agree with that. But if you were old enough to know it, which you're not, it reminds me of a Lucille Ball episode where she works at a chocolate factory near a conveyor belt. she's supposed to wrap the chocolates, and it starts going so fast she can't keep up, and she's eating them and putting them in her pockets. That's what's happening with our internal affairs investigators. There are too many cases coming through, many of which could be resolved in a different manner, but we don't have that freedom.
So just to be clear here, this, I think it was 39 case investigators that needed to be hired. You're saying that they have been hired?
What? No, so you're
No.
talking at the total vacancy number?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I think the number was 7 that the court had ordered. Is that correct? And
39
Seven.
total. We have 39 investigators we have to keep.
Okay, and
That-
so you have
that we-
39,
yeah.
you
So-
have 39 investigators?
yeah, so the 7 we had to hire,
Okay.
we've hired to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Do you worry that this sends the wrong perception to the community about your office?
Absolutely. You know, there are folks that, I'll say this with confidence, there are some folks in the community that want to see us fail. We're not going to, but there are some who will constantly demonize this office. They may benefit from it financially. They may just feel that's their cause, whatever it is. Law enforcement is so critically important to our community's well-being that it is something that we can never go without. And that's why I'm thankful men and women are still willing to do this job. But what happens is that squeaky wheel, those who want to see us fail, those who want to demonize law enforcement, they push your button so frequently. And I don't mean you personally, I'm just talking about the media, that it becomes something that you hear and you repeat on their behalf. But that's not the story. I get more public expressions of support from members of the Hispanic community by far than any other representative of our community in general. And I'm not making it about me, because I'm just a reflection of the organization. But I remember going to a town hall early on, and there were a few hundred people in the room, and there were a handful of activists, and they were making accusations saying, "You're no better than your predecessor," which is untrue. We don't target people by the color of their skin. I don't tolerate racial profiling, bias, or violations of civil rights. I take that very serious. But if I were my predecessor, you would not see 200 people of color sitting in the room to have a conversation with me. That didn't happen before. So in general, I think that the population at large is very happy with who we are as an organization. I think that we have some things that we still need to overcome and fix. But we are not the office of the past. We are 100 times better, and we're getting better every day. So we just have to make sure that people hear the good stories and not just the negative.
Tell me though, the monitor's report found that there still is some bias regarding Hispanic, the Hispanic community and traffic stops, that some of your deputies are taking longer on those traffic stops, and that they're more often than not leading to citations or tickets or that kind of thing. What's your response to that?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand the disparity, and that's the term we'll use, because first and foremost, these are things that occur after the traffic stop. So it's not racial profiling. It's not a situation where they're stopping a person because of the color of their skin. It's a situation where everyone is being stopped, what is presumed to be for a lawful traffic violation. And the disparity is about 2 percentage points, meaning that if you stopped 100 Caucasians and 100 Hispanics, all for speeding, for some reason the average is we're writing 52 tickets to the Hispanic community members, and we're writing 50 tickets to the Caucasian community members. So any disparity is unacceptable. But what we do is we root down into that. We pull those employees, the deputies, off the street, review the body-worn camera, go through the citations, have a conversation with them to see if it's implicit bias or some other factor. There has not been a single case yet where, and these investigations are reviewed by the monitors, where the circumstances were bias in nature. Oftentimes there may be implicit elements or circumstances that can be resolved, and if they're not resolved, that employee is disciplined or rooted out of the organization. But I don't know of another organization in the nation that has as comprehensive a review of every traffic stop as we do. We don't know what the national average is. Now, any variance is unacceptable. But 2 percentage points or 30 seconds in length, of detaining someone, sometimes there are real legitimate reasons. Taking longer to explain to a person whose language barrier may be a challenge a little bit longer. Stopping to explain how to deal with that ticket, or if they have other questions. There's a lot of other elements. But if there are bad employees, we will root them out and we will deal with it, because it won't be accepted here.
Now, you are back in court on Friday. What are you hoping for? What's your message for that proceeding there?
Well, that proceeding is really a status hearing that the judge requested, and the purpose of it is we were ordered to do I'm drawing a blank, forgive me, but
Staffing study.
Thank you. I'm going to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So that request came from the judge's of status hearing because we were required to do a staffing study and present that to the judge. The staffing study is, are we right-sized for the demand on the organization? Because I think to some extent, and I think it's misrepresented, and I'm not sure if that's coming from maybe the monitoring team or the judge's perception himself. Are we putting enough bodies in internal affairs for the capacity of this organization? I have 130 employees assigned specifically to major crimes. Okay, so the most serious crimes that are occurring in our county. I have 110 employees assigned to the 3 divisions responsible for court compliance. That's so, if you look at other organizations, so overly weighted for internal review. We're okay with that. But the judge wanted to see if we're right sized. I can tell you without that, we're not right sized. You know why? Because this county has grown faster than any county in the nation over the past 5 years. Post-COVID, we have seen a greater loss of employees than any time in the history of the organization, consistent with other police agencies. I think we're at about 25% vacancy ratio in this organization. So with 75% of the staff, we're asked to do 150% of the job. So do I need more bodies? Heck yeah, I do. How they're deployed in the organization, though, I would like to have the final say because I'm the guy who has the final accountability. I'm the one who will be held responsible for how we do what we do. Therefore, give me the latitude to make those decisions so that I can succeed or fail on my own merit.
Do you think you need more investigators to handle these internal investigations?
No, I think it's a compilation of 2 things. I think it is understanding that historically, because things were neglected completely, that the courts felt it was necessary to go to the extreme. Every single case, no matter what the circumstances, no matter how long in history, no matter if current or former employee, we're not that organization. I hold my people accountable. But I would like to know that if I have an employee who uses profanity, is questioned for being rude, is wearing the wrong uniform, is doing something that is a minor infraction that can be handled on a personnel level, we should give them that respect, that courtesy, like every other profession in the world. But here it's different. Here you will go under investigation. It's even been weaponized to the point where if one employee doesn't like another and they want to get them in trouble, they'll call an anonymous complaint that may have no merit whatsoever, and we'll have to investigate that the same way to disprove it. Because our employees are deserving of the same thing that we say that every community member is entitled to when it comes to an allegation. You are innocent until proven guilty. But there comes a time when you have to realize that there are better ways to have the same outcome and treat people with dignity and respect in a profession that so few want to do anymore, and it's become more and more difficult with every day.
Yep. But tell me, you still have said you were committed to coming under full compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. I respect the courts. And I had said before, and I find this interesting because I'm a named defendant. I should have the same rights as everyone else, so freedom of speech, the right to appeal things that I disagree with. That doesn't mean that I don't respect the courts or I'm not willing to abide by their rules. But I still have rights under the law, and this office has a right to protect itself or defend itself against things that we think maybe weren't handled perfectly or the right way when it comes to the court process. So I spent my whole life enforcing the laws that I believe in, that I am committed to respect and obey. I hold my staff to that. I just booked an employee not too long ago for violating the law. If the court says that we have to do something, we have to do it, and we'll find a way to get it done. I just ask the court to understand that there are good men and women in this organization, and I've worked darn hard to earn the reputation that I'd like to think is one of integrity and respect and ethics. This is my organization right now as the sheriff. It's not the monitor's organization. It's not the judge's organization. It's not an upset community member's organization, although we represent their needs. I'm the guy who's got to answer to questions and the criticisms. So give me the chance to fix the problem without having someone from out of state tell me what I'm doing right or wrong in a visit that occurs once every 3 months.
Tell me, how many internal investigations do you have right now?
In total number, we can get to the number for you. The backlog was around 2,000. That's a big number. But when I say 2,000, it doesn't mean that they haven't even been initiated. They're in all different stages of portions of completion. The comment by the court and by the monitors was the backlog is unacceptable, but the quality of the investigations is not in question. The discipline is not in question. So we do great quality work. It's just the quantity has made the time frames too lengthy. So we have a considerable backlog. And without some form of adjustment to the orders on how we have to carry these investigations out, even with adding additional staff, I don't know how we catch that number.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question, if there's a goal for coming into compliance at this point. I know you don't wanna probably give a specific date, but if there's any month or year where you're hoping to finally be done with this.
I'm going to share this, probably not to the dismay of some folks who probably prefer that I didn't. I was in my first term as sheriff, and I was sitting down speaking with one of the monitors about the internal affairs investigations. And I said, if there were 100 cases, you and I would agree on how 99 of those should be handled, and the last one I'd be more severe than you on how to handle it. And if I were sheriff for 2 terms, I'd never know a day as sheriff not under federal court oversight for offenses I didn't commit. And his response was, well, maybe by your 3rd term, sheriff. And I found that stunning, because it wasn't about what we're doing or how we're doing it or who we are. It was about a projected time frame that someone feels is realistic, that when we've paid enough penance, when we've given up enough flesh, when we have, faced enough criticism that the people who were unfairly treated feel as though justice was served, then it's time. And that's not how it should be. Even the Department of Justice came forward and said that monitors shouldn't be in place for, I think it's more than 5 years, that they think there's a flaw in that process if it's more lengthy than that, but because this is a federal court order, not a consent decree, the very organization that feels strongly about that doesn't abide by that same belief in this circumstance.
What do you say to those folks that were a part of this original lawsuit and say that these changes need to be made, they're not satisfied with what they've seen, they want full compliance, they want the trust in the community to be restored?
Yeah, no, and they deserve that. They're entitled to that, without a doubt. I'd say come spend some time in the organization, get to know the people that are here now versus the people that existed before. From the hierarchy, the executive leadership, all the way down to the line level employees, we have a lot who were there before, but there's been considerable turnover. And I demand of our employees that they treat everyone with respect and dignity, that if we don't lead with that, then we don't deserve to wear this patch and this badge. So I don't think that you can truly measure us by the compliance requirements of the court. I think that there are other measurables, other human elements that you can see and feel and know the difference in this organization now versus then, and I think that they would be quite proud of it. They got to know a lot of the people in this organization, who they are as people and how they are as professionals.
Thank you. Is there
Sure.
anything I didn't ask you about that you wanted to get across?
Anybody got anything that you'd like for me to add to this? I'm going to add this, whether it's got value or not. I believe that law enforcement reflects the greatest attributes and values of the community that it serves. I believe that you have seen in this organization, we've become, even under federal court oversight, a destination for men and women who want to be in law enforcement that they choose as a first option, not a last option. That speaks volumes. But most importantly, I believe that the community, if they want to see more from law enforcement and they have greater expectations, then you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to do to help us recruit those men and women who can be the difference makers in the vision that you see law enforcement should represent. This is not an institution that stands on its own and serves the community. It's an institution that's aligned with the community, and we're in this together. So help us help you.
Tell me too, the cost of this has been over $200 million.
Yeah.
There are going to be a lot of people in this community that say that money could have been better spent on so many other things.
You're talking to one of them. Unequivocally, if you said, Sheriff, when you took over in 2017, if we gave you $100 million and said improve this organization, I would have built programs that help develop leaders. I would have built programs that help better train our men and women deal with mental health issues and de-escalation and understanding drug addiction in different capacity and being more involved in education that is prevention oriented. You give me an extra $100 million to spend on how to improve public safety, I promise you would have gotten a better return on investment than what is approaching $250 million in the current circumstances. And I'll close with this. I know I'm going to face scrutiny for saying that. And I'm not saying it to be disrespectful, to be defensive. I'm saying it because I've been in this profession for 30 years and I signed on to be sheriff to make this organization all it's capable of being, and I'm the one who's got to put his name on the ledger every time something goes wrong, so no one's more invested than I am.
But don't you bear some responsibility now that, so, it's been years since this lawsuit, you've been in office for, I guess it's almost 6 years.
No, I absolutely bear responsibility. Unequivocally, this is my job, and it's when it comes to the court orders, I have to meet their demands. All I ask for is that when we express concerns or and we express challenges and we still are committed to the same outcome, that we're given that same platform to be heard, that those who screamed the loudest because they knew that this was necessary, that they were being victimized, were being heard, because we're in it with them. We're not in opposition to that audience or to that representation of our community. We're committed to those same people. So this is my job. I'm the sheriff. If it's not getting done, it's on me. But I come to work every day figuring out how we can overcome and get there.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, I really
bet, thank
appreciate
you.
it.